is okay. It definitely reads as a debut novel. This is her debut novel. I feel like I haven't read anything like it before. It seems really, it's unique in its own way. I don't know if this book was entirely for me. Hi and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be doing a creepy horror reading vlog. Yeah. It is February, and February is the month of love, and well, maybe you don't have love and February is actually just a horror show. I think that's just like an excuse, because I actually just love reading horror books, horror media, like consuming anything that's scary, creepy, uneasy, gothic at any point of the year. So yeah, so I'm gonna be continuing that on, and this month I actually ended up picking two very creepy books for February, and they're creepy in different ways. As far as I know, I haven't read either of them yet, so but I think they will both have an element of fear, or at least the strange within them. So the books that I'm going to be reading are The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monika Kim. This is a literary horror novel, and it was published not that long ago. It is about a woman who engages with men, or I'm not sure if it's multiple men or specific men, but I think she has a history of being both fetishized by men, and this book kind of explores her engaging with men and torturing them, and also reflecting on the Korean cultural practice of eating eyes, fish eyes that is. So I think it's kind of like a horror grotesque novel that explores eating the eyes of men that are not really good men. So as much as I know of it, it sounds very interesting. It sounds very up my alley, sounds very creepy, exploring themes that I can relate to as a woman. The other book that I'm going to be reading is Pet Sematary by Stephen King. This book is a classic. Stephen King is one of the most lauded authors of our time. And I've never read a Stephen King book, so this is kind of long overdue. I know he's king of a lot of genres: historical, sci-fi, horror, and this just so happens to be a horror novel of his. I know it follows a pet cemetery, essentially a place in the woods where children go to bury their pets, and what ensues after that, I have no idea. It's quite a long book, so I can imagine there is a lot that happens. I'm not 100% sure though, but I'm intrigued by this. A lot of people that I trust have really spoken highly of this novel, so I'm super excited for that. Just to make things easy on myself, I'm going to start with The Eyes Are the Best Part. Now it's a lot shorter, and it has like very, very short chapters, which, as much as it might not be the best for creating a narratively consistent story, it makes books easier to read. So let's start out with The Eyes Are the Best Part. It is a couple of days later. I've been kind of busy this week, so I haven't had as much time as I would have liked to read, but I'm still reading. The Eyes Are the Best Part. I'm honestly it's laughable how little I've read of this book. When it comes to that book, what drew me in initially was that it was kind of hyped up on TikTok. Like, I just saw a bunch of people posting about it, and I thought that it would be a good read. It's not super popular, but like a year or two ago, people were definitely speaking about this book a lot. Honestly, the cover of the book is insane. Genuinely so captivating and unique. I've never seen a book cover this beautiful. Like, I think I was judging the book by its cover because it is so pretty. It's genuinely really nice to look at. And so far the book is okay. It definitely reads as a debut novel. This is her debut novel, and the writing just feels very heavy, feels very descriptive. It feels very debut. It is trying to convey the message that it wants to, but it's kind of doing it in a bit of a clunky way and in a bit of an obvious way. There's no beauty to how the story is being told. So honestly, writing wise, I'm not enjoying it. The vibes, I would say it's definitely giving like we're exploring patriarchal influence on women's life, like the brainwashing of the patriarchy that can happen to you, like when you're too reliant on male attention for your self-worth. So I think that's what we are exploring in this book. And so far in the plot, we have a young woman whose life has fallen apart because her father has left, and that has in turn led her mother to spiral. Her mother, a woman who has always been naive and not really living in the world, but kind of living in like promises that other people have bestowed on her. So even in her past, she lived in Korea. So her mother, having essentially just lived through horrific times in Korea, and I think a lot of Korean stories definitely focus on the poverty and the Japanese occupation that does come up in the story. And we are kind of getting this kind of the counteracting of the one myth with the other, when kind of the problem is men themselves. So like instead of saying all men, you could kind of like try to caveat and say Korean men, and then like building up a fantasy of another type of men. That's kind of been happening. Yeah. But so far I am 39 pages in. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not enjoying it 100%. I feel like it's just a bit too surface level, and the writing isn't like strong enough to carry the story forward. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna enjoy the rest of this book, but I definitely will try to finish it, and I hope that I get a bit of a spook. Yeah, let's see what happens. It is many days later, and I am still reading this book. I've just been, I don't know if I've been busy or I've not been feeling like picking this book up, but I am only halfway through, a little over halfway, and I think that I just want to finish it today. I really can finish it if I just sit down and get to it. But for the most part, I feel like I haven't read anything like it before. It seems really, it's unique in its own way, but once again, the writing is just not up there for me. It kind of has a telling instead of showing, or is it just showing instead of telling? It makes it harder to really connect with the message of the book because everything feels so awesome. But there is a lot of gruesome imagery in this, and I like that, but it just doesn't click well with everything. So there's a lot of visceral imagery, and that has been interesting to read about. It covers a lot of different genres. One of them is definitely literary horror and like feminism horror. But also just like, yeah, it's okay. I really just want to finish it. TBH. The chapters, they're so short. There's like 70 chapters in this book, so the chapters are incredibly short. Another thing, it can be a good thing or a bad thing. In this case, it's a bad thing. It just feels so disjointed. Like she kind of wrote in small bursts, and she was like, oh, I just want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this, I want to do that. And it's like all very disjointed. I need to finish this book today because it's holding back my reading for this month. So let's just sit down and finish this book right here, right now. is still the same day, and I actually have finally finished this book. The eyes are the best part. Almost felt like it was going to go on forever and ever, but somehow we have made it. I don't know if this book was entirely for me. I think it had a lot of themes that I support and that I believe in, but the execution is kind of where mostly I had my reservations. Just like not only the writing, but the way in which the author chose to employ her messages and meaning. They felt very heavy-handed. So the plot is of a young woman who is essentially reckoning with the men in her life and how she, her sister, and her mother have had their lives ruined by men that don't consider them and men that treat them as ornamental objects, men that view them as disposable. And her dissatisfaction manifests itself as an obsession with the consumption of eyes, which is linked to her cultural practice of eating fish eyes for luck. There's a lot of interesting metaphors, a subversion of the male gaze primarily, and also just like focusing in on blue eyes specifically as kind of like a negative aspect. Of course, they're viewed as a beautiful thing, but that beauty is what will essentially get you killed. So there's a lot of interesting things about the book, but I think it just fell flat for me even towards the end. And the entire premise, it kind of is similar to a story where you have an unreliable narrator and they're like little Easter eggs dropped within the story, but we have this sort of slow descent into madness that leads to a pinnacle moment, which kind of leaves our protagonist in a very good spot. It's very much a female rage book. So as for characters, we have Ji-won, and she's our protagonist. Then we have Jeffrey, George, Appa. Those, just know that all the males are essentially bad. Well, not bad, but they exhibit negative characteristics. We also have Ji-hyun, Oma, and Alexis, and some other side characters. For me, I'd say that it probably wasn't worth the read. I still gave it 3.5 stars, but I could truly have gone without reading it, and my life would be the same. It's now that is over, we are going to start reading Pet Sematary by Stephen King. This is the edition that I have. It is quite a long book, almost 500 pages. It's very long. After that book, I think I'm in the mood for just more structure. So I'm reading this because, I don't know, it's my first Stephen King. It's also cool that there's a movie out, so once I'm done with this, I can watch the movie and compare and see what I like and what I don't and what's the same. I always love reading books with film adaptations or series. It just makes it one step more fun because there's just more to enjoy. The font in this book is also quite tiny. Don't know if you can see that, but it's very small. So if it took me so long with the previous book, I just hope that it will be better. But before we get started, I'll just read the blurb. The house looks right, feels right to Dr. Louis Creed. Rambling, old and comfortable. A place where the family can settle. The children grow and play and explore. The rolling hills and meadows of Maine seem a world away from the fume-choked dangers of the city. It's only those big trucks on the road outside which growl out unnerving threats. Behind the house, there's a carefully cleared path up into the woods to a place where generations of local children have walked in processions with the solemn innocence of the young, taking with them their dear departed pets for burial. A sad place maybe, but safe. Surely a safe place, not a place to seep into your dreams, to wake you sweating with fear and foreboding. In the previous book, there was also quite a large focus on nightmares and dreams and kind of the distinction between reality and hallucination becoming a lot less clear. So it sounds like there's also a lot about dreams in this one. So we'll see what happens. Hey guys, it is much later on, a few days later, and I'm still reading Pet Sematary. I'm about almost halfway through with this book. I'm really determined to finish this today or tomorrow, but I really want to finish this today. It's a Saturday, so I might be able to. I'd say the book is quite slow. There are moments of intrigue and moments of my interest being piqued, but on the whole, I would say the book is quite slow. So it's kind of very, I don't want to say info dumpy, but it does feel info dumpy. And even though it's info dumpy, you kind of don't need to remember anything, because whatever necessary information that you need, Mr. King will remind you of it conveniently always. So it's kind of like he's doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you. You don't need to think, you just need to process. You need to feel, I guess, which is not my favorite type of writing style. Just so much information, and it's kind of like you have to sift through that and figure out what is useful and what is nothing, meaningless. I don't think this book reminds me of anything. I've never really read anything like this. I don't think so. I can't remember, but it is my first Stephen King, so maybe all of his books have this similar style, so I'm not sure, but it is unique in the sense that I've never read anything like it. And so far in the book, I have been feeling things. I've been getting emotionally affected by the characters, and I've been getting emotionally consumed. There are moments where I can feel myself getting very scared. Yeah, and I guess that fear is building up, and I hope that we get to the bottom of this mystery. A couple of characters he's insinuated quite heavily with motives that are not quite clear. His neighbor, Judd, there are certain actions that he's taken which in one way seem to be easily explainable, but there are certain ulterior motives that he seems to be having, and I don't trust Judd right now. But I'm interested in the rest of the book. We're kind of coming onto this moment discussing human life over pet life. So not just pet life, but human life as well. And I think there's an interesting conversation that can be had. So far, it is an okay read. Later on in the day, and I have now officially finished reading Pet Sematary, and I feel like the book was very long. It felt long as well, so it took a lot out of me to read it. It was spooky, freaky, eerie. There was a lot of dread, but also it was not the easiest read for me. And it had a lot of elements, mostly exploring grief and pain, but also exploring an ancient power which is greater than you, and sort of like an ancestral curse in a sense of repeating the same mistakes in order to, it explores the lengths that you'll go to for the people that you love, and questioning the aftermath of making certain decisions that, in all honesty, should never have been made. Big story on grief and on loss. I think I enjoyed a lot of elements in the book. I won't say it was perfect for me. Like I said, the writing was just so long-winded, very long-winded. So it wasn't my perfect read, but I did enjoy it. And there were moments where I felt emotionally overcome. This book, I feel like it just carries such a heaviness in it. And there's so much dread. I just feel very weighed down by the narrative, which means it's done its job well. Rather than feeling outright fear, I think I just feel, like I said, dread. I feel exhausted, like so many of the characters were just being pushed to your limits complete exhaustion. Our protagonist Louis Creed is, by the end of the book, is a changed man, and it's a common theme in horror novels that our main characters are sort of driven to a point of unrecognizability, being completely unrecognizable, and it took a lot out of me, and I'm realizing it now. It's very heavy and it's very affecting, honestly. His mindset and his state and even the ending is just complete insanity. That's where his choices led him, and that's where our human minds, if we're given that choice, the most impossible choice, that's the path that we choose. And like I said, the ending was I won't say it was unexpected. I think I hoped for the best, and I think that's kind of something that Stephen King does, is that he really lets you into his character's mindset. So like, I'm equally as shocked when things don't turn out the way that in his own lunacy was hoping for it to be. And I think Stephen King has this way of writing in his books where he kind of spoil it for you. He'll be like, oh, this person didn't know that they were gonna die in a day or something. It's like, but why are you telling me then? But I think he was tight-lipped about the end, and there was a lot in this book, like just so much information. But I think overall I did enjoy it, but it wasn't 120% to my taste. I think I'm just gonna get into a couple spoilers. I don't really have much to say. I think obviously the ending of Louis going and burying his wife and how he got away with it. I mean, I think that in his own delusion of thinking he left it too late, that's why his son Gage became a murderous child. I mean, I don't quite know if that is true. I mean, I think I'm just more leaning into the folklore of the story and how like the burial grounds that have that energy of the Wendigo, I'm kind of the mind that Wendigo spirit is contaminating their souls as they leave. You know, once they are resurrected, they are mean, as Judd had said. I think that him witnessing Gage killing his wife and killing Judd and still making the decision to bury his wife in those grounds, effectively destroying himself. And I think there was a little bit of a mention of their future where he was checking the pulse of Gage, and he said that that would be the last time that he would do that as a doctor. So I think that even though Louis doesn't kill himself like Billy's family, the family that had the son that was in the war and he resurrected his son, even though he didn't burn himself along with the other mates, it's almost worse that he's continued to live on. I feel like we don't really need more in terms of the future, because we know like it can only ever be bad. The Wendigo spirit has thrived. But overall, I did give the book 3.5 stars. I think it might be a 4-star, but it was just so slow and so long. And I think the impact and the heaviness is in part due to how long we got to spend with the characters, but it did feel still like quite a long book. So I think I'm happy with 3.5 stars. Now that I've read these 2 horror novels, I'm just gonna rank them in terms of what I enjoyed more. I definitely enjoyed Pet Sematary more than The Eyes Are the Best Part, but I don't think that either of them were 100% to my liking. I still am really happy that I got to read these. Pet Sematary, hands down, was a lot more spooky. I still feel spooked by this book. I'm still like on edge. I don't know what's going on. And then this one is like, it's more symbolic scariness, you know, kind of like watching someone descend into madness. I didn't feel any sort of like physical fear. But I enjoyed this. I think no more horror books for a little while, because that was a lot and I need a break. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, leave a comment below of your favorite horror novel, and maybe I'll read it once I've recovered from Pet Sematary. Like and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.